Hey, what's up, y'all? It's Will. If you're interested in spirits, liquor, distilleries, distilling, you're going to be very interested in this podcast. Probably learn a lot. This was highly educational, and let's just put it this way. If you have any of those interests, listen to Scott Maitland from Topo Distillery talk about let's just say the interesting aspects of this industry that most people probably don't know about. I sure didn't. I'll leave it at that. No spoilers here. Check it out. Phenomenal conversation. Y'all keep listening. More coming soon. Thank you. All right, good, man. We're recording. All right. Scott, still got you? Nice. All right. Folks, got Scott Maitland on the phone. Scott's like he's had the trifecta with us. He was in our book, Restaurant Owners in Court, back in 2010, 2011. He was one of the first people we went and filmed when we started our film series. He's been on the podcast, and here he is again. It's been a long time, though. And Scott owns two businesses in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Top of the Hill Restaurant and Brewery, which has been there for, almost 25 years now? Is that right, Scott?
Almost 25 years, yeah.
Golly. And then Topo Distillery, which, when did you start that? About 6 years ago? 5, 6 years ago?
No, 10 years ago.
10. Oh, that's right, 10. Holy cow. That's been an interesting ride, and that's what we really wanted to, you and I were talking earlier this week, but I wanted to kind of wrap with you about the distillery, why you got into it, what's happened in the industry here and in North Carolina since then, and kind of where you are with it now.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I mean, this sounds really weird, but it's true. We were the second brewery in the country to put microbrewed beer in a can. But unlike Dale, we weren't distributing. We were just a brew pub, and we wanted to sell six-packs instead of growlers. And, through a Forrest Gumpian scenario where I bought this canning machine thinking I could buy 5,000 cans, I realized only later that I had to buy 165,000. So I get into can brew and distributing that off of a third-floor brewery in an urban environment. We were weirdly successful, but obviously it was kind of unsustainable for logistical reasons. And so I was looking to build another brewery to support the canning operation. And in the process of that, realized that brewery would have to be quite large. What could I do with the excess capacity? Well, I could distill it. And I became so enamored with distilling and the idea that instead of just being another brewery, I could be a Sierra Nevada or a New Belgium of distilling. I decided I would start distilling. And of course, all of this was back in 04, 05, 06. Takes me a while to get going on it, and should have been open in 8, but the law surrounding distilling and being on the bleeding edge, I know that some of the first breweries in the country had problems with their inspections departments, and unfortunately I was sort of the bleeding edge with distilling in an urban environment and got messed around for a while, but ultimately got open and was excited about the idea of being a trailblazer in a relatively nascent industry in terms of craft distilling. Unfortunately, that proved out to be a lot harder than I expected.
How many distilleries were there in North Carolina when you opened in 2010?
Well, I would have been number one.
Okay.
But I got delayed by the town. I had the opportunity to buy the old Chapel Hill News building in town, and so I thought that would delay me 6 months. It ended up delaying me 4.5 years because the town told me there can be no problem starting a distillery there. And so I tried to buy the building, and I thought that would take a couple months. It took 19 months. By the time I got the building, the town inspector had changed, and the new inspector said, no way can you put a distillery there. Of course, I didn't know that until after I bought the building. So I had to rewrite the fire code, do all kinds of stuff. So would have been number one, ended up being number 5.
Would have been, okay.
And there's now 75.
So in 10 years, 70 additional distilleries have opened in North Carolina.
Yeah, and weirdly, bookending because we're the fifth brew pub, eighth brewery in North Carolina, and there's now like 350, and we're the fifth distillery, and now there's like 75.
Are distilleries? I mean, do you think will they continue to grow with the rate that the breweries have? I would imagine not. It's a more challenging business.
Well, I think it depends on the legal landscape, and every state's different. And stepping back for a second, when I was starting mine, everyone told me not to start it in North Carolina because we were a control state. But I did my research, and I found that distilleries were actually doing better in control states because the states saw them as economic development. My mistake was I didn't check to make sure that North Carolina's version of control was the same as Virginia or Pennsylvania or Ohio's, where those states actually own the liquor system. We say that in North Carolina.
So they own the liquor system in those states. They're control states. We're a control state.
Yes,
but
we're different.
Okay.
We say as people, oh yeah, it's a state-controlled ABC system.
Uh-huh.
But it's not. We actually franchise our ABC stores to local towns, municipalities, and counties. So in Virginia, the Department of Revenue runs the ABC system. In North Carolina, the ABC oversees promulgations of rules for 172 county and town level boards to run a system of 417 liquor stores.
172 county and because there's like 100 counties in North Carolina, right? So
100 counties.
Then you have the town. Good grief.
Yeah, so some counties will have 3 or 4 boards in one county, and that all goes back to history and how we went from being dry to being wet. But my point is that unlike Virginia, who saw it as economic development, and when the first distillery comes to them, the state of Virginia is like, oh my God, this is great. You've got a tax base, you've got employees, we're going to put you in every store, and we're going to train our employees to sell your stuff because this benefits our state. In North Carolina, it was like hard to get in to begin with, and then when we did get in, every ABC board was pretty much hostile. Like they could care less. It was difficult for the first distilleries like myself to even get on a shelf at all.
Why is that? Why would they not want local? I mean, the customer appreciates local products.
Well, but one of the things you learn is that a monopoly does not care about the customer.
Yeah,
and the only person they care less about than the customer is the supplier. Unless, of course, the supplier is taking care of them in some real way. And one of the great fictions, I think, is the idea that somehow our ABC system is above and beyond some kind of graft and problems. And I'm not saying every board's got those issues, but trust me, there has been enough documented situations where, you've just got a lot of interesting things that happen within a system that nobody understands and nobody oversees.
Yeah, easy to get away with that stuff, isn't it? Mm-hmm.
It really is. And
who could ever see 172 of them? Nobody could. Not affect. Okay, makes sense. Gotcha.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And not only that, but the 100 each board has its own board of local folks. All of them are dialed in politically. That's how they get the position to oversee it. So it is an interesting dynamic. So the ABC boards. So in our effort to allow a distillery, for example, to sell one bottle when people were given a tour, the ABC boards saw that as a real affront to their monopoly, thought it would hurt them. The irony is over the last 10 years, we've gone from not being able to sell anything to this past year, we were able to get unlimited bottle sales at the distillery. And the irony is not only have North Carolina distilling sales gone up in ABC stores since then, but all sales have gone up. So that was our point to the ABC system. We're not going to take away sales from you. We're going to help generate sales. We're the best marketing arm you could have. Let's just say that the ABC system is not the Cracker Jack retailing outfit that you would probably have in a private sector.
No, totally makes sense, man. That's a very convoluted system. So you've got to go through 172 boards, and each one has to decide
right. And so
yay or nay.
My somewhat cavalier way, I was told that starting a brewery was going to be hard. And, it wasn't easy, but we could do it. So when people said, starting a distillery is going to be hard, I'm like, yeah, I heard that. No, it is infinitely harder, at least in North Carolina, but I also think in everywhere, because specifically in North Carolina, you can't, or at least you could not, sell directly to your consumer. And you have this state quasi-monopoly situation going on in North Carolina. In other states where they're free, one of the issues you've got is you're free, but there's been real consolidation of distributors. And the distributors and the big brands are sort of in this frenemy scenario where they need each other, but they really don't like each other. And the big brands, though, don't want the distributors to expand into small brands. And they put such demands on the distributors that the distributors don't have the bandwidth to do it. And so it's difficult to break in on a free state as well.
Interesting. Is there okay? So you went there were 5. Now there's 75, and every one of those distilleries has to go to every board. I mean, wherever they want to sell it, or where they'd like to sell it. So if you want to sell it in Charlotte, you got to. There's got to be more than one in Charlotte, isn't there? Or are there?
No, there's one board in Mecklenburg County.
Okay, so Mecklenburg County's got
21 stores.
Okay. Do you have to get each store to buy in, or?
Yeah, well, it depends on the board, and so.
Good grief.
Yeah, right, and so it's and by the way, from my perspective, for example, Mecklenburg, they've been very friendly to small distillers, right? And it really is a board by board situation. I will tell you, since I was the vanguard of changing the laws, there are boards that will not carry me because they are just carrying out economic retribution against me and my brand because I helped change the laws to allow sales within distilleries. And so, it is a brutal, mean, ugly business where you're mandated to use certain channels. And that's why I look at it as one of the achievements of my career is the bill we passed in 19 that basically authorizes the creation of micro distillery restaurants and unlimited sales of bottles at distilleries of products that are made there, plus also distilleries, cocktails, and that type of thing. So until last year, you go to a distillery, you could only take a 1/8 of an ounce sample of a beverage. You couldn't have it in a cocktail, not even water.
Golly.
Right. It's crazy. It's been crazy. And so we have finally got the laws to such that I think that, the one thing when you look at the brewing industry and you look at the distilling industry, while there are breakouts in both that seem to somehow get that distribution piece rolling and get it going, by far the most prevalent successful model is a brewery that is either a brew pub or got a very vigorous tasting room where they're selling direct retail, and then they've got some distribution as kind of a side hustle. Mm-hmm. But the direct retail sales is what allows the business to survive, and it's also what creates the community. And that's one of the things that I love about the distilling and brewing industry is that we are creating a community. And what's really wild is this entire industry is based on lies, right? 80% of distilleries don't make their own alcohol from scratch, big and small. And so it's all marketed, though.
80% don't make it from scratch?
Yeah, 80%. They buy it already made and then claim it that it's theirs. I mean, so ask yourself, how does a brewery or a distillery that's only been open 2 years come out with a 12-year-old whiskey?
Oh, right. Well, they're buying that stuff. Isn't there that company in the wherever it is, like Indiana?
MGP. MGP in Indiana. Yep.
Yeah.
And we've got one of those. That is a successful business model, is making alcohol for other people. And I'm not saying that that's bad, but
it's deceptive because they know the consumer doesn't know that.
Get it.
They just
That's right.
Okay,
that's exactly
so you
right.
buy it from them, and then you stick your label, and you just what do you just bottle it locally?
No, you don't even do that, probably.
You literally so that all you do is stick your label on it.
Yeah, it depends, man. It totally depends. Yeah. And by the way, it's not just the question of I haven't been open long enough. Like, there are literally distilleries that don't make a damn thing. So
it's just a marketing. That's all it is. Yeah, it's an
old
building and
family,
who
like Bullet whiskey. Right?
Yeah.
So very famous brand, very huge brand. If you ask the normal customer, they would say, "Oh yeah, Bullet. That was founded by the Bullet family. The grandpa, handed it off to the son. Now the son and the daughter are, well, turns out that's all fiction. Bullet was created by the dad in the 80s, was acquired by Seagram's. Seagram's was acquired by Diageo. Diageo comes to the Bullet, the original founder, in 2005, and says, listen, we got this Bullet brand. It doesn't do much. We want to put some money into the brand, so we are going to create a fictional backstory that you had a grandfather or you had a father who was a big moonshiner distiller, created this brand, you took it over, and you're going to hand this brand down to your daughter, and it's all locally owned, and this is all you. But it's all a fictional story, but we're going to pay you to do that. And so that's what they did, and everyone believed it. And in a weird twist, the daughter ended up suing the father for sexual molestation. And in that lawsuit, it comes out that the whole backstory and everything is a complete lie. It's just a marketing stage set up by Diageo to sell Bullet whiskey, which in and of itself is mass-produced at another distillery and just bottled.
That's got to be very illegal, though, isn't it?
You would think, but interestingly, the federal labeling agency, the federal agency that oversees alcohol labeling, was created in the 1890s prior to the FDA. And it turns out that people have been lying about the provenance of liquor from jump. Ever since the time of George Washington and Hamilton, 90% of the liquor sold in the United States has been made by 6 distilleries or less. People would just buy it and then say they made it and market it. And what happened was alcohol would be passed from person to person, like retailer or like broker to broker to wholesaler, so often that people would cut it along the way to make it stretch. And so they were cutting it with things like lye. So, lie's a poison that'll burn your mouth, but they would replace, like they double the alcohol or double the volume they had by putting lye fluid in there, because people felt the burn and felt like they were getting alcohol when in fact they're getting lye poison.
Oh, God.
Right? So the point is that the TTB was formed to make sure that didn't happen. But since lying about or marketing about the provenance of alcohol was just what everyone always did, the TTB does not look at any claim about handmade or anything like that with anything other than that's just marketing puffery, which brings us to Tito. I think of Tito like I think of Anakin Skywalker. Starts off as a great force for good, creates the American craft vodka market.
You're talking about Tito's vodka.
Tito's vodka, yeah.
Yeah.
So, he starts off as awesome. And we helped introduce Tito's in North Carolina. But at the same time I was starting my distillery, Tito's going to scale. And so instead of continuing to make it himself, he ends up buying it from Cargill or Archer Midlands Daniels and bottling that as his own. And people will say, well, what's the big deal? This is America. We're just outsourcing it. The big deal is the way alcohol is made. So if you're fermenting alcohol, there's about 2,000 different yeasts you can choose to ferment the alcohol. If you're the old Tito or if you're Topo, right, we're choosing yeast based on flavor.
Yeah.
Archer Midlands Daniels, Cargill, they are making ethanol for your gas tank. They are picking the yeast based on yield. The problem is, well, their yeast are amazing and will make twice as the amount of ethanol, which is what you really want to be drinking. Their ethanol tastes bad, and you can't distill that out because you're distilling for ethanol. And so how do you get the bad flavor out? You got to filter it like crazy. And when you filter it like crazy, you filter out the bad flavor, but you also filter out all the good flavor. And what you're left with is something that tastes like a solvent. And unfortunately, that's the new Tito's, that's your Grey Gooses, that's all your major brands.
Unbelievable. Really?
Yes. Yeah. And if you don't believe it, Google, like Wall Street Journal, is huge.
Oh, I mean, I say unbelievable. I believe it. I'm sure that's. It actually doesn't surprise me because you always.
I was talking to the listeners.
Yeah.
Don't believe Scott Maitland. Go check this out.
Yeah. Check it out, folks. It's there. Man. So
the point is that the impact of all of this, by the way, is unlike craft. Going back to the challenges distillers have, unlike craft beer, where it was clear what was craft versus what was a major brewery, based on the fact that every major brewery was only making American light lager, right? You got anything else, you knew was craft. In spirits, there is no distinction. Like vodka looks like vodka, right? You can't visually tell the difference. Everybody's making the same products anyways. And everyone's using the same language. Handcrafted, handmade, our recipe, blah, 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 blah. Even though 80% of them is just not true. So it's very confusing to the customer, very effective marketing, but there's no way for the craft distiller to really, carve out that niche. And even some of the breakout brands that we think of that were small, like High West and all of that. Dude, High West wasn't a startup thing. It was a huge investment where they bought Canadian whiskey, brought it in, and marketed it as if it was made in Colorado. It wasn't, right?
Utah, so High West. That's in Park City. What's the? Okay, so all their stuff is.
I thought High West was Colorado. But
no, that's there's no High West is in Park City, and they've got like a big restaurant there and all that kind of stuff. That's freaking. So it's all from Canada.
It was. I think they. So for example, Whistle Pig is another example. They were buying it all from MGP, but then they hurried up and tried to build a distillery so nobody could figure out that in fact it was all a lie. By the way,
wow.
4 years in a row,
MGP?
the double gold winners for rye whiskey in San Francisco, which was, and I can't remember the order, but Whistle Pig, Templeton, Whistle Pig, Templeton, why can't I think of the other two? The point is, 4 of them in a row, all different brands, right? All made by MGP.
Is it the same stuff? I mean, if MGP's making it, are they literally taking the exact same stuff and bunches?
They were, yes. Now it's gotten a little more sophisticated, and these guys will make your own cut for you. But yeah, at one point it was just all the same stuff.
Yeah, they'll make your own cut, but it can't be that much variance. Like not.
That's right.
So that's people are buying. Yeah, this is a fascinating thing to me. I mean, I knew that was happening. I remember seeing something on 60 Minutes. That's why I said some company in Indiana, but I couldn't remember the details. I did not remember it being that large of a share of the market. Yeah. Though it is not surprising because it's an expensive as heck. It's got to be a lot more expensive to have all that equipment to do a distillery than it would be to.
The way to make money in distilling is to not own a distillery.
Yeah.
Buy the alcohol made and focus on your marketing. And that's where I was a little naive. I was thinking, well, this is going to be like beer. And by the way, not just thinking it because I'm a product guy.
Right.
At the heart of it, this is what I made. Do you like it? Right? And so I recognize that maybe marketing is not our strength, but I just kind of always felt like, given the right chance, the best products are going to win.
Well, but the consumer is they're
confused.
They're confused and they're being deceived. I mean, you got to look. I just feel like they're taking a huge risk because the generation of people that the young generation now, millennials, the next generation coming up, they're more, and just as they're more dialed into where's my food coming from, is my food local, am I eating at the local restaurant? They want transparency, they want to know more. They're going to want to know more about their their liquor.
Well, you would think, and I got to tell you, that's one of the most disappointing things. So, we created the first organic distillery in the South.
Yeah.
We're credited by North Carolina for creating the organic wheat market in the state of North Carolina. And that was our belief that, chefs dedicated to local sourcing would see this as a real value.
Yeah.
And customers would get it. And while clearly some do, for whatever reason, what I ultimately have concluded, people don't see alcohol as a food. I mean, they see beer as an agricultural product, but they don't see liquor as an agricultural product. And so they don't even realize how it's made. They don't realize that it's as much of an agricultural product as that chicken breast. And I can't tell you how many times I've been to a restaurant that would talk about the provenance of its chicken and its flour and its onions and all of that, and then say, oh, and by the way, have a nice Grey Goose martini or have a nice Tito's martini, right? And you're just like, dude, what's up?
Well,
maybe don't understand.
But maybe you're just so far ahead of the curve, and like you said, on the bleeding edge, because that's what they view beer that way, don't you think? Because that story has been told enough for long enough now, and they've been educated. Like, I didn't used to think of it that way, but I talked to guys like you. When I left you the other day at Chapel Hill, I went over there and sat down with Sean Lilly Wilson, and he was telling me about how much money they've spent in North Carolina, buying blueberries and strawberries and all that kind of stuff, and people are, that resonates now. People do think of that, but that's because that story's been told long enough. Maybe that'll happen with liquor as well. I mean, the consumer just doesn't know. I don't really know. I didn't know that as much. I need to be educated. Like, this is highly educational. I mean, God, I hope a lot of people that are into liquor will listen to this episode, because it's extraordinary. I mean, it literally has just changed the way I'm thinking. Well, how do you find out, Scott? Like, you go in there and you go to your ABC store. I mean, I go to the ABC store. By the way, you're right, because the one I go to out in South Charlotte's got like tons of North Carolina. It's got a whole section for North Carolina.
Well, we were able to pass a law that mandated they have to have a North Carolina section.
And they've got a good one, and it's prominently displayed. But let's say I roll up on the set, and whether I go to North Carolina, I just go to the mainline stuff. Like, how do you know if it was at, what's the company? MGP.
Well, it used to be kind of easy, but lawyers have kind of gotten the way around it. So here's one of the ways to look at it. If you look at the label, and on the back, if it says produced by, if it says produced by, that means they did not make it.
Okay.
But interestingly, the lawyers have figured out a way around that, which is they have the manufacturer of the liquor file for and get a DBA, the same name as the brand.
Oh my God. Are you serious?
So that kind of way is now kind of gone. So you really got to kind of dig deep. And my whole point is, if you walk into a distillery and you don't see a grain mill, you don't see a fruit press, you don't see evidence of agriculture, you see a bunch of plastic containers, stacked up in the back on the loading dock and all of that, you're not at a distillery, you're at a bottling facility. I'll tell you, I went down to the Bahamas for Thanksgiving in 17, and a taxi cab driver finds out I'm a distiller, says, man, you need to go check out our 250-year-old rum distillery. Like, holy smokes, this is cool. Yeah, absolutely. So I show up at this place. Well, it turns out it's a 250-year-old plantation, but the distillery's only been open for 2 years. But, of course, they've got it all tricked out. It's awesome from a tourist perspective, and they got all these old photos and all this stuff. None of it which applies to the actual facility you're at, but whatever. Well, we get to the quote-unquote distillery, and I say, hey, where is the distillery? And the guy's like, there it is. And I said, no, that's the bottling facility. Where's your actual still? And at this point, I'm still naive enough to think that, maybe there's a rule about not having visitors in a still, whatever, right? And they yank me out of the tour. I go talk to the owner, and the owner's like, yeah, man, I don't make it. I buy it in New Jersey. bring it down here, bottle it up, and then sell it to tourists from New Jersey on the cruise ships.
That's hilarious. Oh, that's great. They got the cab drivers paid off to tell everybody about it.
Right. I mean, honestly, man, it has been, in many ways, this industry has been the most heartbreaking thing I've ever done.
Wow. Yeah. That's fascinating. Okay, so if it says produced, you still don't know because they set up a DBA.
Oh, if it says produced, they definitely.
I mean, but if it's okay, but even if it doesn't say that, it still could be just okay. That's fascinating. So it's very hard then. It's very hard to know. You go to a ABC store, the employees probably don't know. Like you don't know unless you do your own research. And distilleries,
you got to go visit the distillery.
Well, I was going to say they don't have. It's a little bit different than breweries. Like you go to Top of the Hill. There's your equipment right there. Like you can see it. Every brewery I go to, I look at the equipment. It's prominently displayed. It's part of the experience. But distilleries, you don't go to a distillery and hang out and eat a meal.
Not true anymore.
Okay,
see, because the laws have changed. So now, hey, we come in. I've been giving tours for 7 years now, but no, you come in and you'll see it, and
but you don't have a restaurant there at the distillery. That's what I'm saying.
Now the laws have changed, so you can. That's right. You can't have that. And the point is, I think the more than likely it's going to kind of grow more into how breweries said, okay, great, we're going to have tasting rooms. And I actually think that the future is going to be breweries and distilleries co-located together, because it's the only place in North Carolina where you can have beer and cocktails and no food without having a private club.
Beer and cocktails and no food without having a private club. Oh, you'll see those two together with no food?
That's what I'm saying. I think that's the future.
Bond Brothers there in Cary, they don't have food. They just got a big brewery. Like they would have a distillery there too. Okay.
So if they wanted to start their own distillery, they could, and then they could, by law, sell cocktails there too. And they are not required to sell food, nor are they required to run it like a private club. Which normally, if you have alcohol without food, you have to run it like a private club.
Okay, they could do that because then they just get the food truck out, and that's what they do. I went to Bond Brothers.
That's right.
Those guys are good guys.
So I'm thinking that's the that's the thing we've created. Although we've created micro distillery restaurants too. I mean, so.
But it's got to be a club. Because is that why when I go to Broken Spoke here in Charlotte, I have to say I'm a member of the club, I have to sign or whatever it is. It's some silly thing because all you do is write your name down. But I mean,
that's right. It's totally still. We try to get rid of that and.
But did they do theirs? I haven't seen their equipment. I go in there and I drink their stuff, but I wonder if they have this. I don't know. It's interesting. I'm gonna start being more.
You got to be a little more thing, right? Yeah. And my whole point is, man, I'm cool with it as long as the main marketing, like I am totally fine. Like for example, Viglis Brothers here in Durham, they make a Lithuanian spirit that is traditional. It's a great base spirit, and it's flavored with honey and cinnamon. It's Kripnikos. That's what the Lithuanians call it. The point is that Jim Viglis of Viglis Brothers never claims to make the alcohol from scratch. His whole thing has always been, hey, I take this and then I flavor this with my stuff. And he never says I make it from scratch. I hope he sells a crap load because I love that honesty, right? And so my whole point is that I got no problems with people doing this, but just don't lie about it, right?
Yeah.
Don't mislead, right? Because I think the customer believes when they come to a distillery that you're making it from scratch.
Well, you know what? We're suckers for stories. I mean, stories are how we learn. Stories are something we can cling to, and it's funny. I won't say which clothing company this is, but we talked about Patagonia, and I'm a big fan of Yvonne Chouinard, and we've talked about that multiple times. But there's this other outdoors clothing company, and they have they're supposedly headquartered in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And years ago, I was like, God, I like their stuff, man. This is cool. And they're in Jackson Hole, and I like to snow ski, and really cool. Must be like a startup thing. And well, it turns out, this was hilarious. It turns out that they have like a P.O. box there and like 2 people or something like that. But they're literally headquartered in Charlotte. They're owned by a private equity firm, and the guy who runs it is my friend's neighbor. Like, that's how I found it. I was like, dude, that's not like you're talking about. Like they're not. That's not. He's like, my neighbor runs it. I was like, what do you mean your neighbor runs it? Jackson is brawling. No, dude. So I was like, I'm never buying an item from them again because I got suckered. Right, I got fooled.
Well, this is my issue with marketers. Right.
Yeah.
So marketers will say, well, it's okay. It's just marketing.
Yeah.
And the problem is this attitude. There's no other way to say it. I mean, the marketers get upset when you say this, but just this nonstop lying or misleading statements. Well, this is how we're marketing everything now, including our political candidates.
Oh, it totally is.
And so my point is that, it's that old Pogo cartoon, right? I saw the enemy and it was us. It's like, hey, okay, everybody, we need to recognize that we need to validate that the marketer's claims are true, and we need to punish those who aren't. Right?
Yeah,
and
sure.
let's just be honest, and let's be honest in all things, because unfortunately we're selling political candidates like we're selling cheap-ass whiskey. Right? Because, by the way, right, it's like anything else. You can make people believe, just jack it up the price or whatever, convince them it's good, whatever. Put it in a really special bottle. So I hope I'm not coming across as a bitter cynic, although I kind of feel like I've become that.
No, you know what? You're coming across as somebody that's learned a lot, and you're taking what you've learned and leveraging that as a tool to educate the consumer who does want to know. Like I said,
That's right.
Some people don't care, whatever. They're, fine, I don't really care. I'm not discerning. I'll buy whatever, and that's fine. But more and more people are, and when you do, and the thing about it, this is what I tell my kids all the time. I'm like, don't be a sucker. Like when I found out I was being suckered by that brand, and they would say, oh, well, we didn't, and there's probably some legalese they can say, well, we, but
we have a
whatever.
post office in Jackson Hole.
Yeah, but the point is you're full of it, because the story you're telling, you know what you're doing, and it's deliberate, and you're confusing people, you're deceiving people. So once you find out you've been suckered, man, it's like that's a really myopic way to run a business, I think, because, okay, maybe you make money short term, blah, 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 we're growing, but then as soon as people start finding out, word of mouth spreads, and people start realizing they've been suckered, then it's like you go from like really popular to like screw them, because what happens is
the problem is this whole industry.
Yeah.
The whole industry is like this. So all your huge brands, they got all these branding stores, got all this stuff. So I'm not going to say it's all bullshit, but so much of it.
Yeah.
Right? That, dude, they're closing ranks, man. And nobody wants to upset the goods.
Yeah.
I was told by my distributor in Georgia that I needed to stop telling the story about Tito and tasting my stuff against Tito, because that, it was upsetting. And I'm like, well, tell me what it is that I'm doing wrong. And they're like, well, nothing. You're accurate. You are right. But, we sell a lot of Tito's. And I say, well, you sell a lot of Tito's because you say it's handmade and all this kind of stuff. You're lying. I'm not. So maybe you should be selling more Topo. Well, you know how this story ends. Tito paid and I'm kicked out of Georgia, right?
Oh, really? How many states are you in?
At one point I was in 11. So we reduced it. So now we're in Tennessee, South Carolina, North Carolina, California. And not to sound like David Hasselhoff, but we're getting pretty big in Japan.
Japan, man. There you go. I was just going to ask you about overseas. I think I told you I was going out there to see, Karen Hoskin at Montana Rum out in Crested Butte. I think she sells a bunch of stuff over in Spain. I don't know, we're going to do a podcast episode, and I'll have to ask her about that. But she does a lot here, but there's some big market for her overseas in one of those countries,
and the
Spain
laws
or
are
Italy.
such in Colorado, and it's not just laws but culture, right?
Yeah.
That distilleries were really able to really take off like breweries did, which is awesome.
There's a lot more out there. A lot of distilleries. Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to say there's a lot more, but they're a lot more successful.
A lot more successful. What about, so what's up in Japan? How are they buying organic?
Yeah, that's the crazy part, right? So,
liquor from North Carolina.
A Japanese woman comes and visits his family, takes a tour at the distillery, says, man, I can sell this stuff in Japan. So we end up exporting a small amount, and then over there, another bigger group became aware of it, and I mean, yeah, just it's a long story, but
was it your bourbon or your gin or what?
Well, it was our
vodka?
gin and our whiskey. Although, it's funny, right? Going back to the schedule fly story about sticking to your knitting, right? So here I'm in Japan, all of a sudden I got to change the packaging.
Oh.
You know what I mean? I got to do. I mean, like, it wasn't. It has not been as great as I would have imagined because of the expenses and stuff that we had in terms of making this ready for the Japanese market, which is nothing on the Japanese. That's what you got to do, and I'm fine with that. But it is interesting because it was definitely, it's not just something that it's the same product. No, we had to go through a lot of work and effort to do that. And here's the other thing. This was, this is the shit you learn. But so how does the liquor get there? Well, it's got to go through the Panama Canal, and we used to use real corks. And we would have some problems with corks popping in domestic stuff, but the first pallet that we sent over, every cork popped, even though we had put all this stuff on it, right? And so we had to switch the screw tops, and we had to do all kinds of stuff. So it was a real effort. But by God, we have sold stuff in Japan, so it's pretty cool.
Dang. That's interesting. Yeah, Japanese are into their... they would like your pure stuff. They don't want to be...
Well, that's it. The organic thing is a deal. And then we also thought we had a deal in China, but that ended up kind of being more of a scam than anything else. But, I mean, this distillery has taken us all over the world. It's pretty crazy.
Well, the Japanese, their stuff's legit, I think. I don't think they have the same issues there. I would guess they don't. They're very into purity and, well, anyway, so that's interesting. That's fascinating. This is incredible. I'm going to go get rid of about half my freaking bourbon bottles, man.
I think the way to look at it is that, that the people that make liquor traditionally see it as a chemical.
Uh-huh.
Right? And I think the craft folks, the folks that really are craft, we see it as food.
Yes.
And that's the difference. And neither one of them is wrong, but don't market it as a food when you treat it like a chemical.
Well, can you imagine if you were selling beer and you said it was craft beer and it was actually Budweiser?
Well, some people have done that, right? That was a somewhat successful for Pete's Wicked Ale. You know what I mean? But yes, but you're putting your finger right on it. And the difference was that you could tell the difference by looking at it with beer. You can't do that with booze.
You can't do that with booze, but you should be able to tell the difference by tasting it. Couldn't you?
Oh,
well, I mean, I know you can because, quite frankly,
problem.
I remember tasting yours that time when you gave me the tour, and it was noticeably different. You did the taste of like 4 different kinds, and it was pure and, I mean, good grief, that stuff was it was the vodka. It was phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, so here's the thing, though, right? Here's the other deal.
Yeah.
Nobody drinks stuff neat.
I do.
So I'm going to buy this thing. I got the story, and what I'm going to do, I got this vodka. I'm going to put it in tonic.
Yeah.
Right? You can't taste it anyways.
Right. Yes.
So, I mean, on one hand, one of the reasons why we don't drink vodka neat in this country is because unlike Russians and Poles who had a history of handmade vodka that actually has some flavor, we have only... I always tell people it's like, if you made the analogy to bread, if bread was vodka, the only vodka we've ever had is Wonder Bread, right? Just this white stuff with no flavor, and so we're like, this is vodka, we stick it in stuff. But the reality is that vodka can be drank neat or on the rocks and appreciated, or in a martini and appreciated for its flavor. In fact, you've just convinced me. When I get done with this, I'm going to go make myself a martini because it's just so great, right? Whereas if you're drinking a vodka martini made by any major American brand, Tito's included, I guarantee you most people are going to make it dirty because they need the olive brine to hide the solvency flavor of the actual vodka.
Oh, I bet so, man. Yeah, it is interesting that most people don't. When I'm out with my buddies, I'm always like, I normally just get bourbon, neat, just get a couple fingers and rarely does anybody. I'm like, I don't like. You want to. You're all obsessed with this craft beer, and you want this craft beer, and it's got to be local. And then but then the liquor, when you add all that stuff to it, it's. I don't know, man. I like the purity of just drinking it just as it is. But I guess I'm weird about a lot of stuff.
No.
So whatever.
I mean, this is why we bond, Will. And honestly, I think it's why we're a little kooky. Because here's the weird part too. I mean, and I don't. Obviously, I'm very proud of the brewing industry. Like I said, I've been in the North Carolina brewing industry since the very beginning.
Yeah.
The problem is like, I mean, from my perspective, it has gotten a little crazy, right? I mean, like it's like people have become obsessed with just new and different, just for new and different, and all these wacko flavors sometimes, and it's sort of like, man, I sometimes feel like we just lost the ability just to enjoy a well-made, good constructed beer. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
And it becomes this. What it really comes down to is, for some reason, I think wine, beer, booze, it's really attached in some ways to how we think of ourselves, our ego, how we present ourselves. Mm-hmm. What I'm drinking is a statement to somebody of who I am, right? It's interesting. It's complicated. It really is.
Well, I do agree with that. I do agree with that very much. Now, I'm probably making that statement when I'm just like, I just want it neat. But it's just because I like things simple. I don't know. Maybe that's the statement I'm making. It's like, I don't need a bunch of stuff.
Right?
Like,
I mean, and like I say, obviously, drinking whiskey neat is by no means unusual.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about gin or vodka or whatever, a lot of people have never thought about what it tastes like because.
I want some of your vodka. I should have gotten a bottle while I was there. All right.
I felt bad. You brought me that really nice swag bag, and I
oh, no. I don't care. But you know what? Next time I'm rolling back through there, man, I want to come get a bottle of that vodka. I'm going to start drinking that vodka plain, neat, just like it's supposed to be.
No, I'll tell you, here's the perfect way to drink Topo vodka, right? So I think of all of our alcohols too.
Yeah.
And so I think the food rules apply. So classic food combination is sweet and salty.
Yeah.
And so there's a sweetness to our vodka. And I just said, oh yeah, everyone's going to drink olive brine. Well, normally if they come in and they want a Tito Dirty Martini, they're asking for 3 parts Tito's or some other brand, 1 part olive brine, right?
Uh-huh.
That's so much salt and stuff. That's all you can taste. So my whole thing is do 4 parts Topo, 1/4 of a part olive brine. So you got the sweet with just a little bit of salt. And then I'm a believer in vermouth. People say extra dry. They don't even know why. That means no vermouth. And I think Americans don't like vermouth because no one told us vermouth isn't a liquor. It's a wine. It goes sour, but we keep it with liquor. So the vermouth always tastes like crap because it's years old and it's sour and it's nasty. So throw away your vermouth, buy a new bottle, keep it in the fridge. You'll like it a lot better. But I think the point of vermouth is umami. So now you got the sweetness of Topo vodka. So 4 parts Topo vodka, 1/4 of a part olive brine. So you got a little bit of salt to balance against that sweet. And then 1/8 of a part vermouth. So you get that umami character. Shake that, serve it with 3 olives. If that's not the best darn martini you've ever had, I'll eat my hat.
There you go, dude. I love it. Yeah, I've never had a martini. I mean, I will.
Oh my God!
I've never.
Okay, so next time you're coming in, that's
you're gonna make me a martini.
It.
Let me ask you this: can I get some Topo, and can I drink it neat with like a really salty, medium rare ribeye? Get the salt, sweet. There you go.
Yeah.
That's my style right there.
Yeah, man, absolutely.
Take a big old bite of ribeye and then wash it down.
With reserve whiskey, or you can do that with.
Yeah.
You know, I mean.
Oh, I do. But I'm saying like I've never had it with vodka. But you take a big old bite of that salty ribeye, man. Get that thing reverse seared, and then take that down and wash it down with some of that sweet Topo vodka. Whew.
Oh, yeah.
Man.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Yeah, I imagine like a big salt, pepper, and garlic rub.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
that'd be sweet.
I like it. Plus, it doesn't have sugar. I'm trying to get rid of the sugar.
Get rid of the sugar, baby.
Yeah, man. I love the bourbon, but actually the bourbon doesn't really have any sugar, does it?
No, it really...
Yeah, it doesn't.
Remember, the sugar, we're using that to make the alcohol.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
So the glycemic index of liquor is good.
Is very good, yes. Beer's the problem. Beer's got not as good as liquor. All right, dude. This is awesome. Anything else we want to rap about? Did I miss anything?
Well, I don't know. There's all kinds of things I love rapping about with you, but I'm not sure for this podcast.
I mean, anything that we were touching on the other day, because we had a quick conversation when I was rolling, but did I miss anything that we should have addressed?
I don't think so. I think this is good.
All right, man. This is awesome. Love it. Excellent.
All right, buddy.
Scott,
good deal.
Appreciate it, man. Yeah, well, like I said, I'm coming up there a lot these days. So next time I'm up anywhere near there.
Absolutely.
I tell you what we should do. You know what we should do? We should get Brett. And you, Brett, and I go have some dinner or,
That's
have some
what I'm saying. Yeah.
like
no,
that, man.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Because he and I keep trying to catch up there, too. And I think he comes on Wednesdays, I think he told me. Because I was going to see if he was there. Anyway, so maybe we'll do that. Maybe we'll
that'd be great.
Make it happen on Wednesday. All right, man. Enjoyed it very much. Thanks, Scott.
All right, buddy. Talk to you.
See you. All right, y'all.
Bye.
That's it. Wrapping up. More coming soon.